Meghan has always had this very, very strange fascination with Soho House, very much this weird obsession with it.
Without Markus Anderson, I hope to prove to you in this video that Meghan Markle wouldn't have the level of global fame that she enjoys now.
Back in her early days, she was totally reliant on Soho House to pay for her travel, to pay for her accommodation.
Jeffrey Epstein was also Harvey Weinstein, very prominent. There were members. Meghan Markle was just one of the working girls for Soho House. Call girl, working girl, escort, whatever you want to call it. That's what she was.
Markus started off at Soho House London as a waiter, and he was a global membership director when he first met Meghan.
Once a Soho House basic, always a Soho House basic.
He is like a parasite, always lurking in their shadow. No normal family has a constant third wheel, male or female, leeching onto their every move. Markus is practically glued to them.
You know, this is what Meghan has been doing. She's a piece of Klingon, you know, like she clings to somebody who can get her there. So Meghan manages to befriend one person of a very popular group, and then that person introduces her to the others. And because that she's being brought in by somebody they trust, she's welcome.
Now, his job was to go to a new city wherever they were opening up a new Soho House, and his job was to find the best and the brightest of that city to invite to the founding members party. And they didn't just invite anybody. To be a founding member, you really had to be somebody in the social scene of the city where they were opening up.
Meghan Markle only becomes prominent for Soho House, guys, after she starts being on Suits and she's introduced to Markus Anderson. And then she gets more consistent and more prominent work, okay? Because then she could be in the presence of Markus Anderson.
So the next time that we really spot Markus on the radar is he's sitting next to Meghan at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games. And it's amazing when you look at that footage back, because you realise just how far Prince Harry has dropped.
3 minutes ago, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. A flurry of posts, deleted stories, and frantic screenshots hit timelines all at once, all pointing back to one whispered name from Meghan's pre-royal past, Markus Anderson. And before anyone could confirm what was real, the narrative ran ahead of the facts at full speed, dragging Meghan Markle and Prince Harry straight into another digital firestorm. The claim spreading like wildfire wasn't presented as proof. It was framed as a leak, a suggestion, a breadcrumb trail that dared the public to connect dots on its own. Alleged Soho House connections, alleged clients, alleged secrets the palace never addressed. And once those words hit social media, restraint disappeared. Fans froze, critics pounced. Comment sections turned vicious within minutes. Because Markus Anderson isn't just any name. He's long been associated with Soho House, a brand already wrapped in mystery, exclusivity, and speculation. And the moment his name was tied, even indirectly, to leaks, people began rewriting entire timelines of Meghan's life, ignoring the most important word in the story. Alleged, then came the Harry angle. Accounts began claiming the so-called leak explained everything, while others warned the narrative was spiraling into dangerous territory. Clips of Harry looking tense at past events resurfaced. Old interviews were reinterpreted. And suddenly, the word devastated was everywhere, not because Harry said anything, but because the internet decided how he must feel. No statements, no confirmations, no evidence beyond implication. Just a familiar pattern, rumor dressed as revelation, reaction mistaken for reality, and a story running so fast it forgot to check whether it was grounded at all. And once again, the question wasn't what leaked. It was how quickly the internet was willing to believe it did. The frenzy didn't wait for confirmation. It never does. Within minutes of the claim spreading, timelines were already in freefall, treating speculation like breaking news and rumor like revelation. At the center of the storm stood Meghan Markle, once again pulled into a narrative built not on documents or statements, but on implication, association, and the internet's appetite for scandal. And hovering just behind her name was another, Markus Anderson, a figure whose proximity to exclusivity has long made him a magnet for conspiracy. The claim itself spread in fragments, not a full post, not a verified leak, but screenshots of screenshots, paraphrased captions, and frantic commentary, suggesting that Markus had leaked details about Meghan's alleged Soho House connections before her royal life. No list appeared. No names were confirmed. But the suggestion alone was enough to light the fuse, because in online culture, implying access is often treated as proof of influence. Almost immediately, Soho House became the centerpiece of the story. Commentators reminded audiences that Soho House is built on discretion and elite networking, and from there, the narrative leapt recklessly into darker territory. The word clients began circulating without definition. Some accounts framed it as professional networking. Others insinuated something far more salacious, despite offering no evidence. The ambiguity was the point. Ambiguity keeps people guessing. Guessing keeps engagement high. Then came the rewrite of history. Old photos of Meghan at Soho House locations resurfaced, stripped of context, and reposted with loaded captions. Friendships were recast as transactions. Networking was reframed as manipulation. And the same images once celebrated as proof of ambition were now presented as clues in a theory that refused to stay grounded. Into this chaos stepped Prince Harry, not by choice but by projection. Accounts began declaring he must be devastated. Why? Not because he said so, not because he reacted, but because the internet decided how a husband should feel when rumors about his wife trend. Old clips of Harry looking serious were reposted as evidence of strain. Past interviews were mined for lines that could be twisted into retroactive foreshadowing. No one paused to ask the obvious question. Devastated by what exactly? There was no confirmed leak. No statement from Markus, no response from Meghan, no reaction from Harry. Yet the narrative ran anyway. So-called insiders emerged quickly. Anonymous accounts claimed the information had been known for years. Others insisted it was being suppressed. A few alleged that this explained why Meghan was treated the way she was by the press. Each claim contradicted the last, but contradiction didn't slow momentum. It fed it. The most dangerous turn came when speculation crossed into assumption. Some commentators began speaking as if the claims were established fact, even while acknowledging they hadn't seen proof. Phrases like "if true" were dropped halfway through videos. Thumbnails screamed certainty that the audio never delivered. This is how rumor hardens, through repetition, not verification. Meanwhile, voices pushing back were drowned out. Journalists reminded audiences that Markus Anderson has never publicly commented on Meghan's private life. Media analysts warned that framing friendships as clients without evidence veers into character assassination. Others pointed out the familiar pattern. Meghan's past is endlessly interrogated, while similar social climbing by others is praised as hustle. But the pushback struggled to compete with spectacle. Every refresh brought a new angle. Some accounts claimed the leak was intentional. Others said it was accidental. A few suggested it was planted. Theories multiplied because no central fact existed to anchor them. In that vacuum, imagination did the work. And still, silence. Markus didn't post. Meghan didn't respond. Harry remained absent. That silence was interpreted wildly depending on the storyteller. To supporters, it was restraint. To critics, it was avoidance. To algorithms, it was oxygen, because silence invites projection, and projection drives clicks. By the end of the first wave, something uncomfortable had become clear. The story was no longer about a supposed leak. It was about how easily the internet transforms association into accusation, how quickly knowing people becomes owing people, how readily a woman's past is relitigated to undermine her present. And as the noise reached its peak, a quieter question began to circulate beneath the outrage, spoken mostly by those uneasy with the speed of condemnation. If no proof has surfaced, if no one involved has confirmed anything, and if the claims change with every retelling, what exactly are we reacting to? Because if this story collapses under scrutiny, then what just happened wasn't an exposé. It was a rehearsal. A rehearsal for how fast a narrative can be built, how little it needs to stand on, and how devastating it can feel, especially when the people at the center never agreed to play their roles. And as the first wave of frenzy began to exhaust itself, it became clear that the next phase wouldn't depend on another leak. It would depend on whether anyone stopped to ask where the line between curiosity and cruelty had already been crossed. The second wave didn't hit like a bomb. It seeped in quiet, persistent, and far more corrosive. After the initial frenzy burned through timelines, something more dangerous took over: analysis. Not verification, not confirmation. Analysis without facts. The kind that sounds thoughtful, measured, and reasonable, while still building a story on air. And once that shift happened, the narrative around Meghan Markle became harder to challenge because it no longer looked like gossip. It looked like interpretation. Creators began releasing long-form breakdowns, claiming to connect dots. They slowed everything down, replayed old interviews, pulled up photos from years ago, and spoke with the confidence of people explaining something that had already been decided. The language softened, but the implication sharpened. Words like allegedly and if true were sprinkled in just enough to feel responsible, while the conclusions pointed firmly in one direction. At the center of certainty, not because anyone defended Meghan, but because the narrative couldn't sustain momentum without escalating into outright accusation. That's when a new question emerged, quieter but sharper. Why does this story feel so familiar? The answer unsettled people. Because it followed the same arc as so many before it: rumor framed as revelation, association framed as guilt, silence framed as admission. A cycle that repeats because it works, not because it's true. By the end of the second wave, the narrative was no longer exploding, it was hovering, waiting, dependent on something real to anchor it, and that something never arrived. No new leak, no confirmation, no reaction from those supposedly devastated. Just the slow realization that the story had outrun its substance. And that set the stage for what came next. Not a dramatic reveal, but a reckoning with how easily attention can be redirected towards suspicion, and how hard it is to pull it back once it's gone too far. Because when a story survives without facts, the final question isn't who's hiding something. It's why so many people were ready to believe there was something to hide at all. The third wave didn't bring receipts. It brought reckoning. After days of recycled screenshots, speculative timelines, and confident narration built on thin air, the story finally hit a wall it couldn't climb without facts. And when no new information arrived, no list, no confirmation, no statement, the conversation began to fold inward, asking questions it had avoided at the height of the frenzy. The most important shift came when people stopped refreshing for updates and started reviewing what had already been said. Carefully, slowly, with distance. What they found was telling. There was no verified leak from Markus Anderson, no substantiated claim about clients, no on-the-record acknowledgement from Meghan Markle, no reaction, devastated or otherwise, from Prince Harry. The narrative that felt explosive at first now looked circular, built from commentary referencing commentary. And once that became clear, the temperature changed. Media critics began labeling the episode what it was: a case study in how implication can masquerade as revelation when the audience is primed. They pointed out how easily association becomes accusation, especially when secrecy and exclusivity, like those tied to Soho House, are used as rhetorical shortcuts. If something is private, the thinking goes, then it must be hiding something. That assumption did most of the work. Journalists weighed in with reminders that networking spaces are not confessions, that friendships are not transactions, and that silence is not evidence. Several noted that the story's language, leaks, clients, devastated, was doing the heavy lifting, not facts. The words were chosen to trigger emotion, not to convey verified information. And that's when the double standard became impossible to ignore. Analysts contrasted how Meghan's pre-fame networking was framed versus how similar paths are celebrated in others as hustle, ambition, or savvy. The same photos that once symbolized access and aspiration had been recast as suspicious only after the rumor took hold. The shift said more about the lens than the subject. As for Harry, the projection began to unravel. Commentators acknowledged the uncomfortable truth. Assigning emotions to a person who hasn't spoken is storytelling, not reporting. Clips mined for meaning revealed nothing beyond what viewers wanted to see. The label devastated turned out to be a narrative device, effective, viral, and unmoored from evidence. With the heat gone, some creators quietly adjusted their framing. Titles softened. Certainty retreated into caveats. A few posts disappeared altogether. The algorithm, sensing diminishing returns, moved on. And in that movement, the story lost its oxygen. What remained wasn't vindication or fallout, it was clarity. The episode exposed how quickly the internet can turn a whisper into a chorus, how confidently it can assign motives without proof, and how hard it is to correct a narrative once it's been felt as true. It showed how commentary culture rewards escalation, and how easily ethical lines blur when engagement is the currency. Most of all, it highlighted a familiar pattern. When facts don't arrive, attention eventually does what it always does: it leaves. Meghan didn't need to respond to reclaim the moment. Harry didn't need to deny to refute projection. Markus didn't need to speak to end a story that couldn't stand on its own. The absence of confirmation became the conclusion. And that conclusion was quieter than the beginning, but more instructive. Because the real lesson wasn't about a secret that never materialized. It was about how quickly curiosity can tip into cruelty, how easily implication can be mistaken for truth, and how important it is to pause before amplifying claims that rest on nothing more than association. When the noise finally faded, what lingered wasn't scandal. It was a reminder. In an age where rumors travel faster than verification, skepticism isn't cynicism, it's responsibility. And sometimes, the most revealing thing in a viral storm is what never shows up at all. If you're still here, don't swipe away now, because this is the exact moment where stories like this either teach us something or disappear without accountability. The internet moves fast, but understanding takes intention. What you just watched wasn't just about rumors or reactions. It was about how quickly speculation can harden into truth when nobody stops to ask for proof. Liking this video matters more than you think. It tells the algorithm that context deserves space, that conversations don't have to be reckless to be compelling. And the comment section? That's where the real dialogue happens. Did you believe the claims at first? Did your perspective change as the story unfolded? Say it out loud, because those shifts are how misinformation loses its power. If you're not subscribed, you're only seeing the loudest chapter of these stories. Subscribers stay for what comes after the frenzy, when facts fail to appear, when narratives collapse, and when silence becomes the answer. That's where patterns reveal themselves, and that's where real insight lives. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who understands how easily implication turns into accusation online. Because the next leak will arrive fast, and only people paying attention will know whether it's truth or just noise moving at viral speed.